Book 24. A Grace Given in Sorrow. The funeral games were over. Men dispersed and turned their thoughts to supper in their quarters, then to the boon of slumber. But Achilles thought of his friend, and sleep that quiets all things would not take hold of him. He tossed and turned, remembering with pain Patroclus's courage, his buoyant heart. How in his company he fought out many a rough day full of danger, cutting through ranks in war and the bitter sea. With memory his eyes grew wet. He lay on his right side, then on his back, and then face downward. But at last he rose, to wander distractedly along the line of surf. This for 11 nights. The first dawn, brightening sea and shore, became familiar to him, as at that hour he yoked his team, with Hector tied behind, to drag him out 3 times around Patroclus's tomb. By day he rested in his own hut, abandoning Hector's body to lie full length in dust, though Lord Apollo, pitying the man even in death, kept his flesh free of disfigurement. He wrapped him in his great shield's flap of gold to save him from laceration. But Achilles, in rage, visited indignity on Hector day after day, and looking on the blessed gods were moved. Day after day they urged the wayfinder to steal the body, a thought agreeable to all but Hera, Poseidon, and the grey-eyed one Athena. These opposed it, and held out, since Iliad and Priam and his people had incurred their hatred first, the day when Alexandrus made his mad choice and piqued 2 goddesses, visitors in his sheepfold, for he praised a third who offered ruinous lust. Now when dawn grew bright for the 12th day, Phoebus Apollo spoke among the gods. "How heartless and how malevolent you are! Did Hector never make burnt offering or bull's thigh bones to you and unflawed goats? Even in death you would not stir to save him, for his dear wife to see, and for his mother, his child, his father Priam and his men. They'd burn the corpse at once and give him burial. Murderous Achilles has your willing help, a man who shows no decency, implacable, barbarous in his ways as a wild lion, whose power and intrepid heart sway him to raid the flocks of men for meat. The man has lost all mercy. He has no shame, that gift that hinders mortals but helps them too. A sane one may endure an even dearer loss, a blood brother, a son, and yet by heaven, having grieved and passed through mourning, he will let it go. The fates have given patient hearts to men, not this one. First he took Prince Hector's life, and now he drags the body lashed to his car around the barrow of his friend, performing something neither nobler in report nor better in itself. Let him take care, or brave as he is, we gods will turn against him, seeing him outrage the insensate earth." Hera, whose arms are white as ivory, grew angry at Apollo. She retorted, "Lord of the silver bow, your words would be acceptable if one had a mind to honor Hector and Achilles equally. But Hector suckled at a woman's breast. Achilles is the firstborn of a goddess, one I nursed myself. I reared her, gave her to Peleus, a strong man whom the gods loved. All of you were present at their wedding. You too, friend of the base, forever slippery, came with your harp and dined there." Zeus, the Storm King, answered her, "Hera, don't lose your temper altogether. Clearly the same high honor cannot be due both men, and yet Lord Hector, of all the mortal men at Iliad, was dearest to the gods, or was to me. He never failed in the right gift. My altar never lacked a feast of wine poured out and smoke of sacrifice, the share assigned as ours. We shall renounce the theft of Hector's body. There is no way, there would be no eluding Achilles' eye, as night and day his mother comes to him. Will one of you now call her to my presence? I have a solemn message to impart. Achilles is to take fine gifts from Priam, and in return, give back Prince Hector's body." At this Iris, who runs on the rainy wind, with word from Zeus departed. Midway between Samos and rocky Imbros, down she plunged into the dark grey sea, and the brimming tide roared over her as she sank into the depth, as rapidly as a leaden sinker, fixed on a lure of a wild bull's horn that glimmers down with a fatal hook among the ravening fish. Soon Iris came on Thetis in a cave, surrounded by a company of Nereids, lolling there while she bewailed the fate of her magnificent son, now soon to perish on Troy's rich earth, far from his fatherland. Halting before her, Iris said, "Come, Thetis, Zeus of eternal forethought summons you." Silvery-footed Thetis answered, "Why?" Why does the Great One call me to him now, when I am shy of mingling with immortals, being so heavy-hearted? But I'll go. Whatever he may say will have its weight." That loveliest of goddesses now put on a veil so black no garment could be blacker, and swam where wind-swift Iris led. Before them on either hand the groundswell fell away. They rose to a beach, then soared into the sky and found the viewer of the wide world, Zeus, with all the blissful gods who live forever around him seated. Athena yielded place, and Thetis sat down by her father Zeus, while Hera handed her a cup of gold and spoke a comforting word. When she had drunk, Thetis held out the cup again to Hera. The father of gods and men began. "You've come to Olympus, Thetis, though your mind is troubled and insatiable pain preys on your heart. I know, I too. But let me, even so, explain why I have called you here. 9 days of quarrelling we have had among the gods concerning Hector's body and Achilles. They wish the wayfinder to make off with it. I, however, accord Achilles' honor as I now tell you, in respect for you, whose love I hope to keep hereafter. Go now, down to the army, tell this to your son. The gods are sullen toward him, and I too, more than the rest, am angered at his madness, holding the body by the beaked ships and not releasing it. In fear of me, let him relent, and give back Hector's body. At the same time I'll send Iris to Priam, directing him to go down to the beachhead and ransom his dear son. He must bring gifts to melt Achilles' rage." Thetis obeyed, leaving Olympus's ridge and flashing down to her son's hut. She found him groaning there, inconsolable, while men-at-arms went to and fro, making their breakfast ready, having just put to the knife a fleecy sheep. His gentle mother sat down at his side, caressed him, and said tenderly, "My child, will you forever feed on your own heart in grief and pain, and take no thought of sleep or sustenance? It would be comforting to make love with a woman. No long time now will you live on for me. Death even now stands near you, appointed and all-powerful. But be alert and listen. I am a messenger from Zeus, who tells me the gods are sullen toward you, and he himself most angered at your madness, holding the body by the beaked ships and not releasing it. Give Hector back. Take ransom for the body." Said Achilles, "Let it be so. Let someone bring the ransom and take the dead away, if the Olympian commands this in his wisdom." So, that morning, in camp amid the ships, mother and son conversed together, and their talk was long. Lord Zeus, meanwhile, sent Iris to Ilion. "Off with you, Lightfoot. Leave Olympus, take my message to the majesty of Priam at Ilion. He is to journey down and ransom his dear son upon the beachhead. He shall take gifts to melt Achilles' rage, and let him go alone, no soldier with him. Only some crier, some old man, to drive his wagon team and guide the nimble wagon, and afterward to carry home the body of him that Prince Achilles overcame. Let him not think of death or suffer dread, as I'll provide him with a wondrous guide, the wayfinder, to bring him across the lines into the very presence of Achilles. And he, when he sees Priam within his hut, will neither take his life nor let another enemy come near. He is no madman, no blind brute, nor one to flout the gods, but dutiful toward men who beg his mercy." Then Iris at his bidding ran on the rainy winds to bear the words of Zeus, until she came to Priam's house and heard voices in lamentation. In the court she found the princes huddled around their father, faces and clothing wet with tears. The old man, fiercely wrapped and hooded in his mantle, sat like a figure graven. Caked in filth, his own hands had swept over head and neck when he lay rolling on the ground. Indoors his daughters and his sons' wives were weeping, remembering how many and how brave the young men were who had gone down to death before the Argive spearmen. Zeus's courier, appearing now to Priam's eyes alone, alighted, whispering, so the old man trembled. "Priam, heir of Dardanus, take heart, and have no fear of me. I bode no evil, but bring you friendly word from Zeus, who is distressed for you and pities you, though distant far upon Olympus. He commands that you shall ransom the Prince Hector, taking fine gifts to melt Achilles' rage, and go alone. No soldier may go with you, only some crier, some old man, to drive your wagon team and guide the nimble wagon, and afterward to carry home the body of him that Prince Achilles overcame. Put away thoughts of death, shake off your dread, for you shall have a wondrous guide, the wayfinder, to bring you across the lines, into the very presence of Achilles. He, for his part, seeing you in his quarters, will neither take your life, nor let another enemy come near. He is no madman, no blind brute, nor one to flout the gods, but dutiful toward men who beg his mercy." Iris left him, swift as a veering wind. Then Priam spoke, telling the men to rig a four-wheeled wagon with a wicker box, while he withdrew to his chamber roofed in cedar, high and fragrant, rich in precious things. He called to Hector, his lady. "Princess, word from Olympian Zeus has come to me, to go down to the ships of the Achaeans and ransom our dead son. I am to take gifts that will melt Achilles' anger. Tell me how this appears to you. Tell me your mind, for I am torn with longing now to pass inside the great encampment by the ships." The woman's voice broke as she answered, "Sorrow, sorrow, where is the wisdom now that made you famous in the old days, near and far? How can you ever face the Achaean ships, or wish to go alone before those eyes, the eyes of one who stripped your sons in battle? How many and how brave? Iron must be the heart within you. If he sees you, takes you, savage and wayward as the man is, he'll have no mercy and no shame. Better that we should mourn together in our hall. Almighty fate spun this thing for our son the day I bore him, destined him to feed the wild dogs after death, being far from us when he went down before the stronger man. I could devour the vitals of that man, leeching into his living flesh. He'd know pain then, pain like mine for my dead son. It was no coward the Achaean killed. He stood and fought for the sweet wives of Troy, with no more thought of flight or taking cover." In majesty, old Priam said, "My heart is fixed on going. Do not hold me back, and do not make yourself a raven crying calamity at home. You will not move me. If any man on earth had urged this on me, reader of altar smoke, prophet or priest, we'd say it was a lie and hold aloof. But no, with my own ears I heard the voice, I saw the god before me. Go I shall, and no more words. If I must die alongside the ships of the Achaeans in their bronze, I die gladly. May I but hold my son and spend my grief, then let Achilles kill me." Throwing open the lids of treasure boxes, he picked out 12 great robes of state, and 12 light cloaks for men, and rugs an equal number, and just as many capes of snowy linen, adding a dozen chitons to the lot. Then set in order 10 pure bars of gold, a pair of shining tripods, 4 great cauldrons, and finally 1 splendid cup, a gift Thracians had made him on an embassy. He would not keep this either, as he cared for nothing now but ransoming his son. And now, from the colonnade, he made his Trojan people keep their distance, berating and abusing them. "Away, you craven fools and rubbish! In your own homes have you no one to mourn that you crowd here to make more trouble for me? Is this a show that Zeus has crushed me, that he took the life of my most noble son? You'll soon know what it means, as you become child's play for the Achaeans to kill in battle now that Hector's gone. As for myself, before I see my city taken and ravaged, let me go down blind to death's cold kingdom." Staff in hand, he herded them until they turned away and left the furious old man. He lashed out, now at his sons, at Helenus and Paris, Agathon, Pammon, Antiphonus, Polites, Deiphobus, Hippothous, and Dius. To these 9 the old men cried, "Bestir yourselves, you misbegotten whelps, shame of my house! Would God you had been killed instead of Hector at the line of ships! How cursed I am in everything! I fathered first-rate men in our great Troy, but now I swear not one is left. Mestor, Troilus, laughing amid the war cars, and then Hector, a god to soldiers, and a god among them, seeming not a man's child but a god's. Ares killed them. These poltroons are left, hollow men, dancers, heroes of the dance, light-fingered pillagers of lambs and kids from the town pens. Now will you get a wagon ready for me, and quickly? Load these gifts aboard it so that we can take the road." Dreading the rough edge of their father's tongue, they lifted out a cart, a cargo wagon, neat and maneuverable, and newly made, and fixed upon it a wicker box. Then took a mule yoke from a peg, a yoke of boxwood knobbed in front, with rings to hold the reins. They brought out too the band 9 forearms long called the yoke fastener, and placed the yoke forward at the shank of the polished pole, shoving the yoke pin firmly in. They looped 3 turns of the yoke fastener round the knob and wound it over and over down the pole, tucking the tab end under. Next, the ransom. Bearing the weight of gifts for Hector's person out of the inner room, they piled them up on the polished wagon. It was time to yoke the mule team, strong in harness, with hard hooves, a team the Mysians had given Priam. Then, for the king's own chariot, they harnessed a team of horses in the line of Tros, reared by the old king in his royal stable. So the impatient king and his sage-crier had their animals yoked in the palace yard, when Hecate, in her agitation, joined them, carrying in her right hand a golden cup of honeyed wine, with which, before they left, they might make offering. At the horses' heads she stood to tell them, "Here, tip wine to Zeus, the father of gods. Pray for a safe return from the enemy army, seeing your heart is set on venturing to the camp against my will. Pray in the second place to Zeus, the storm king, gloomy over Ida, who looks down on all Troy country. Beg for an omen bird, the courier dearest of all birds to Zeus, and sovereign in power of flight, that he appear upon our right in heaven. When you have seen him with your own eyes, then, under that sign, you may approach the ships. If Zeus, who views the wide world, will not give you vision of his bird, then I at least cannot bid Godspeed to your journey, bent on it though you are." In majesty Priam replied, "My lady, in this matter I am disposed to trust you and agree. It is an excellent thing and salutary to lift our hands to Zeus, invoking mercy." The old king motioned to his housekeeper, who stood nearby with a basin and a jug, to pour clear water on his hands. He washed them, took the cup his lady held, and prayed while standing there midway in the walled court. Then he tipped out the wine, looking toward heaven, saying, "Zeus, our father, reigning from Ida, god of glory and power, grant I come to Achilles' door as one to be received with kindliness and mercy. And dispatch your courier bird, the nearest to your heart of all birds, and the first in power of flight. Let him appear upon our right in heaven, that I may see him with my own eyes, and under that sign journey to the ships." Zeus, all foreseeing, listened to this prayer, and put an eagle, king of winged creatures, instantly in flight. A swamp eagle, a hunter, one they call the dusk-wing. Wide as a doorway in a chamber, spacious and high, built for a man of wealth, a door with long bars fitted well, so wide spread out each pinion. The great bird appeared, winging through the town on their right hand, and all their hearts lifted with joy to see him. In haste the old king boarded his bright car and clattered out of the echoing colonnade. Ahead the mule team drew the 4-wheeled wagon, driven by Idaeus, and behind the chariot rolled, with horses that the old man whipped into a fast trot through the town. Family and friends all followed, weeping as though for Priam's last and deathward ride. Into the lower town they passed, and reached the plain of Troy. Here those who followed after turned back, sons and sons-in-law, and Zeus, who views the wide world, saw the car and wagon brave the plain. He felt a pang for Priam, and quickly said to Hermes, his own son, "Hermes, as you go most happily of all the gods with mortals, and give heed to whom you will, be on your way this time as guide for Priam to the deep-sea ships. Guide him so that not one of the Danaans may know or see him till he reach Achilles." Argeiphontes, the wayfinder, obeyed. He bent to tie his beautiful sandals on, ambrosial, golden, that carry him over water and over endless land on a puff of wind, and took the wand with which he charms asleep, or when he wills awake, the eyes of men. So, wand in hand, the strong god, glittering, paced into the air. Quick as a thought he came to Heli's waters and to Troy, appearing as a boy whose lip was downy in the first bloom of manhood, a young prince, all graciousness. After the travellers drove past the mound of Ilus, at the ford they let the mules and horses pause to drink the running stream. Now darkness had come on, when, looking round, the crier saw Hermes near at hand. He said to Priam, "You must think hard and fast, your grace. There is new danger. We need care and prudence. I see a man-at-arms there, ready, I think, to prey on us. Come, shall we whip the team and make a run for it, or take his knees and beg for mercy?" Now the old man's mind gave way to confusion and to terror. On his gnarled arms and legs the hair stood up, and he stared breathless. But the affable god came over and took his hand and asked, "Old father, where do you journey with your cart and car, while others rest below the evening star? Do you not fear the Achaeans where they lie, encamped hard, hostile outlanders nearby? Should someone see you, bearing stores like these by night, how would you deal with enemies? You are not young, your escort's ancient too. Could you beat off an attacker, either of you? I'll do no hurt to you, but defend you here. You remind me of my father, whom I hold dear." Old Priam answered him, "Indeed, dear boy, the case is as you say. And yet some god stretched out his hand above me, he who sent before me here, and just at the right time, a traveller like yourself, well-made, well-spoken, clear-headed too. You come of some good family." The wayfinder rejoined, "You speak with courtesy, dear sir, but on this point enlighten me. Are you removing treasure here amassed for safety abroad until the war is past? Or can you be abandoning Ilion in fear after he perished, that great one who never shirked a battle, your own princely son?" Old Priam replied, "My brave young friend, who are you? Born of whom? How nobly you acknowledge the dreadful end of my unfortunate son." To this the wayfinder replied, "Dear sir, you question me about him. Never surmise I have not seen him with my very eyes, and often on the field. I saw him chase Argives with carnage to their own shipways, while we stood wondering, forbidden war by the great anger that Achilles bore Lord Agamemnon. I am of that company Achilles led. His own ship carried me as one of the Myrmidons. My father is old, as you are, and his name's Polyctor. Gold and other wealth he owns, and I am seventh and last of all his sons. When I cast lots among them, my lot fell to join the siege against Troy's citadel. Tonight I've left the camp to scout this way, where, circling Troy, we'll fight at break of day. Our men are tired of waiting, and will not stand for any postponement by the high command." Responded royal Priam, "If you belong to the company of Achilles, son of Peleus, tell me this, and tell me the whole truth. Is my son even now beside the ships? Or has Achilles by this time dismembered him and thrown him to the wild dogs?" The wayfinder made reply again, "Dear sir, no dogs or birds have yet devoured your son. Beside Achilles' ships, out of the sun, he lies in a place of shelter. Now 12 days the man has lain there, yet no part decays, nor have the blowflies maggots that devour dead men in war fed on him to this hour. True that around his dear friend's barrow tomb Achilles drags him when dawn shadows come, driving pitilessly, but he mars him not. You might yourself be witness on the spot how fresh with dew he lies, washed of his gore, unstained, for the deep gashes that he bore have all closed up, and many thrust their bronze into his body. The blessed immortal ones favour your prince, and care for every limb, even in death, as they so cherished him." The old king's heart exulted, and he said, "Child, it was well to honour the immortals. He never forgot at home in Ilion. Ah, did my son exist? Was he a dream? The gods who own Olympus, they in turn were mindful of him when he met his end. Here is a goblet as a gift from me. Protect me, give me escort, if the gods attend us, till I reach Achilles' hut." And in response, Hermes the wayfinder said, "You are putting a young man to the test, dear sir, but I may not, as you request, accept a gift behind Achilles' back. Fearing, honouring him, I could not lack discretion to that point. The consequence, too, could be unwelcome. As for escorting you, even to Argus's famous land I'd ride a deck with you, or journey at your side. No cutthroat ever will disdain your guide." With this, Hermes, who lights the way for mortals, leapt into the driver's place. He caught up reins and whip, and breathed a second wind into the mule team and the team of horses. Onward they ran toward parapet and ships, and pulled up to the moat. Now night had fallen, bringing the sentries to their supper fire, but the glimmering god Hermes the wayfinder showered a mist of slumber on them all. As quick as thought, he had the gates unbarred and open to let the wagon enter, bearing the old king and the ransom. Going seaward, they came to the lofty quarters of Achilles, a lodge the Myrmidons built for their lord, of pine trees cut and trimmed, and shaggy thatch from mowings in deep meadows. Posts were driven round the wide courtyard in a palisade, whose gate one crossbar held, one beam of pine. It took 3 men to slam this home, and 3 to draw the bolt again, but great Achilles worked his entryway alone with ease. And now Hermes, who lights the way for mortals, opened for Priam, took him safely in with all his rich gifts for the son of Peleus. Then the god dropped the reins, and stepping down he said, "I am no mortal wagoner, but Hermes, sir, my father sent me here to be your guide amid the Achaean men. Now that is done, I'm off to heaven again, and will not visit Achilles. That would be to compromise an immortal's dignity, to be received with guests of mortal station. Go, take his knees, and make your supplication. Invoke his father, his mother, and his child. Pray that his heart be touched, that he be reconciled." Now Hermes turned, departing for Olympus, and Priam vaulted down. He left Idaeus to hold the teams in check while he went forward into the lodge. He found Achilles, dear to Zeus, there in his chair, with officers at ease across the room. Only Automedon and Alcimus were busy near Achilles, for he had just now made an end of dinner, eating and drinking, and the laden boards lay near him still upon the trestles. Priam, the great king of Troy, passed by the others, knelt down, took in his arms Achilles' knees, and kissed the hands of wrath that killed his sons. When, taken with mad folly in his own land, a man does murder and in exile finds refuge in some rich house, then all who see him stand in awe. So these men stood. Achilles gazed in wonder at the splendid king, and his companions marvelled too, all silent, with glances to and fro. Now Priam prayed to the man before him. "Remember your own father, Achilles, in your godlike youth. His years, like mine, are many, and he stands upon the fearful doorstep of old age. He, too, is hard-pressed, it may be, by those around him, there being no one able to defend him from bane of war and ruin. But he may none the less hear news of you alive, and so with glad heart hope through all his days for sight of his dear son come back from Troy, while I have deathly fortune. Noble sons I've fathered here, but scarce one man is left me. 50 I had when the Achaeans came, 19 out of a single belly, others born of attendant women. Most are gone. Raging Ares cut their knees from under them, and he who stood alone among them all, their champion and Troy's, 10 days ago you killed him, fighting for his land, my prince, Hector. It is for him that I have come, among these ships, to beg him back from you, and I bring ransom without stint. Achilles, be reverent toward the great gods, and take pity on me. Remember your own father. Think me more pitiful by far, since I have brought myself to do what no man else has done before, to lift to my lips the hand of one who killed my son." Now in Achilles, the evocation of his father stirred new longing and an ache of grief. He lifted the old man's hand and gently put him by. Then both were overborne as they remembered. The old king huddled at Achilles' feet wept, and wept for Hector, killer of men, while great Achilles wept for his own father, as for Patroclus once again. And sobbing filled the room. But when Achilles' heart had known the luxury of tears, and pain within his breast and bones had passed away, he stood then, raised the old king up, in pity for his grey head and grey-beard cheek, and spoke in a warm rush of words. Sad and old, trouble and pain you've borne and bear aplenty. Only a great will could have brought you here among the Achaean ships, and here alone before the eyes of one who stripped your sons, your many sons, in battle. Iron must be the heart within you. Come then and sit down. We'll probe our wounds no more, but let them rest, though grief lies heavy on us. Tears heal nothing, drying so stiff and cold. This is the way the gods ordained the destiny of men, to bear such burdens in our lives while they feel no affliction. At the door of Zeus are those 2 urns of good and evil gifts that he may choose for us, and one for whom the lightning's joyous king dips in both urns will have by turns bad luck and good, but one to whom he sends all evil, that man goes contemptible by the will of Zeus. Ravenous hunger drives him over the wondrous earth, unresting, without honour from gods or men. Mixed fortune came to Peleus. Shining gifts at the gods' hands he had from birth, felicity, wealth overflowing, rule of the Myrmidons, a bride immortal at his mortal side. But then Zeus gave afflictions too. No family of powerful sons grew up for him at home, but one child, of all seasons and of none. Can I stand by him in his age? Far from my country I sit at Troy to grieve you and your children. You too, sir, in time past were fortunate, we hear men say. From Macha's isle of Lesbos northward, and south of Phrygia and the Straits, No one had wealth like yours, or sons like yours. Then gods out of the sky sent you this bitterness, the years of siege, the battles and the losses. Endure it then, and do not mourn forever for your dead son. There is no remedy. You will not make him stand again. Rather await some new misfortune to be suffered." The old king in his majesty replied, "Never give me a chair, my lord, while Hector lies in your camp uncared for. Yield him to me now. Allow me sight of him. Accept the many gifts I bring. May they reward you, and may you see your home again. You spared my life at once, and let me live." Achilles, the great runner, frowned and eyed him under his brows. "Do not vex me, sir," he said. "I have intended, in my own good time, to yield up Hector to you. She who bore me, the daughter of the Ancient of the Sea, has come with word to me from Zeus. I know in your case, too, though you say nothing, Priam, that some god guided you to the shipways here. No strong man in his best days could make entry into this camp. How could he pass the guard or force our gateway? Therefore let me be. Sting my sore heart again, and even here, under my own roof, suppliant though you are, I may not spare you, sir, but trample on the express command of Zeus." When he heard this, the old man feared him and obeyed with silence. Now like a lion at one bound, Achilles left the room. Close at his back the officers Automedon and Alcimus went out, comrades in arms whom he esteemed the most after the dead Patroclus. They unharnessed mules and horses, led the old king's crier to a low bench and sat him down. Then from the polished wagon they took the piled-up price of Hector's body. 1 chiton and 2 capes they left aside as dress and shrouding for the homeward journey. Then, calling to the women slaves, Achilles ordered the body bathed and rubbed with oil, but lifted too and placed apart, where Priam could not see his son. For seeing Hector he might in his great pain give way to rage, and fury then might rise up in Achilles to slay the old king, flouting Zeus's word. So after bathing and anointing Hector, they drew the shirt and beautiful shrouding over him. Then with his own hands lifting him, Achilles laid him upon a couch, and with his 2 companions aiding, placed him in the wagon. Now a bitter groan burst from Achilles, who stood and prayed to his own dead friend. "Patroclus, do not be angry with me, if somehow, even in the world of death, you learn of this, that I released Prince Hector to his father. The gifts he gave were not unworthy. Aye, and you shall have your share this time as well." Then Prince Achilles turned back to his quarters. He took again the splendid chair that stood against the farther wall, then looked at Priam, and made his declaration. "As you wished, sir, the body of your son is now set free. He lies in state. At the first sight of dawn you shall take charge of him yourself and see him. Now let us think of supper. We are told that even Niobe in her extremity took thought for bread, though all her brood had perished, her 6 young girls and 6 tall sons. Apollo, making his silver longbow whip and sing, shot the lads down, and Artemis with raining arrows killed the daughters. All this after Niobe had compared herself with Leto, the smooth-cheeked goddess. 'She has borne 2 children,' Niobe said. 'How many have I borne?' But soon those 2 destroyed the 12. Besides, 9 days the dead lay stark. No one could bury them, for Zeus had turned all folk of theirs to stone. The gods made graves for them on the 10th day, and then at last, being weak and spent with weeping, Niobe thought of food. Among the rocks of Sipylus' lonely mountainside, where nymphs who race Achelous river go to rest, she, too, long turned to stone, somewhere broods on the gall immortal gods gave her to drink. Like her we'll think of supper, noble sir. Weep for your son again when you have borne him back to Troy. There he'll be mourned indeed." In one swift movement now Achilles caught and slaughtered a white lamb. His officers flayed it, skillful in their butchering, to dress the flesh. They cut bits for the skewers, roasted and drew them off, done to a turn. Automedon dealt loaves into the baskets on the great board. Achilles served the meat. Then all their hands went out upon the supper. When thirst and appetite were turned away, Priam, the heir of Dardanus, gazed long in wonder at Achilles' form and scale, so like the gods in aspect. And Achilles in his turn gazed in wonder upon Priam, royal in visage as in speech. Both men in contemplation found rest for their eyes, till the old hero Priam broke the silence. "Make a bed ready for me, son of Thetis, and let us know the luxury of sleep. From that hour when my son died at your hands till now, my eyelids have not closed in slumber over my eyes, but groaning where I sat, I tasted pain and grief 1,000-fold, or lay down rolling in my courtyard mire. Here for the first time I have swallowed bread, and made myself drink wine. Before I could not. Achilles ordered men and serving women to make a bed outside in the covered forecourt, with purple rugs piled up and sheets outspread, and coverings of fleeces laid on top. The girls went out with torches in their hands, and soon deftly made up a double bed. Then Achilles, defiant of Agamemnon, told his guest, "Dear venerable sir, you'll sleep outside tonight in case an Achaean officer turns up, one of those men who are forever taking counsel with me, as well they may. If one should see you here as the dark night runs on, he would report it to the Lord Marshal Agamemnon. Then return of the body would only be delayed. Now tell me this and give me a straight answer. How many days do you require for the funeral of Prince Hector? I should know how long to wait and hold the Achaean army." Old Priam in his majesty replied, "If you would have me carry out the burial, Achilles, here is the way to do me grace. As we are penned in the town, but must bring wood from the distant hills, the Trojans are afraid. We should have mourning for 9 days in hall, then on the 10th conduct his funeral and feast the troops and commons. On the 11th we should make his tomb, and on the 12th give battle if we must." Achilles said, "As you command, old Priam, the thing is done. I shall suspend the war for those 11 days that you require." He took the old man's right hand by the wrist, and held it to allay his fear. Now crier and king, with hearts brimful, retired to rest in the sheltered forecourt, while Achilles slept deep in his palisaded lodge. Beside him, lovely in her youth, Briseis lay, and other gods and soldiers all night long, by slumber quieted, slept on. But slumber would not come to Hermes, the good companion, as he considered how to ease the way for Priam from the camp, to send him through unseen by the formidable gatekeepers. Then Hermes came to Priam's pillow, saying, "Sir, no thought of danger shakes your rest, as you sleep on, being great Achilles' guest, amid men fierce as hunters in a ring. You triumphed in a costly ransoming, but 3 times costlier your own would be to your surviving sons, a monarch's fee, if this should come to Agamemnon's ear, and all the Achaean host should learn that you are here." The old king started up in fright, and woke his herald. Hermes yoked the mules and horses, took the reins. Then inland like the wind he drove through all the encampment, seen by no one. When they reached Xanthus, eddying and running god-begotten river, at the ford, Hermes departed for Olympus. Dawn spread out her yellow robe on all the earth as they drove on toward Troy with groans and sighs, and the mule team pulled the wagon and the body. And no one saw them, not a man or woman, before Cassandra. Tall as the pale gold goddess Aphrodite, she had climbed the citadel of Pergamus at dawn. Now looking down she saw her father come in his war-car, and saw the crier there, and saw Lord Hector on his bed of death upon the mule-cart. The girl wailed and cried to all the city, "Oh, look down, go to your windows, men of Troy and women. See Lord Hector now. Remember joy at seeing him return alive from battle, exalting all our city and our land." Now, at the sight of Hector, all gave way to loss and longing, and all crowded down to meet the escort and body near the gates, till no one in the town was left at home. There Hector's lady and his gentle mother tore their hair for him, flinging themselves upon the wagon to embrace his person, while the crowd groaned. All that long day, until the sun went down, they might have mourned in tears before the gateway. But old Priam spoke to them from his chariot. "Make way, let the mules pass. You'll have your fill of weeping later, when I've brought the body home." They parted then, and made way for the wagon, allowing Priam to reach the famous hall. They laid the body of Hector in his bed, and brought in minstrels, men to lead the dirge. While these wailed out, the women answered, moaning. Andromache of the ivory-white arms held in her lap between her hands the head of Hector who had killed so many. Now she lamented, "You've been torn from life, my husband, in young manhood, and you leave me empty in our hall. The boy's a child whom you and I, poor souls, conceived. I doubt he'll come to manhood. Long before great Troy will go down plundered, citadel and all, now that you are lost, who guarded it and kept it, and preserved its wives and children. They will be shipped off in the murmuring hulls one day, and I along with all the rest. You, my little one, either you come with me to do some grinding labour, some base toil for a harsh master, or an Achaean soldier will grip you by the arm and hurl you down from a tower here to a miserable death, out of his anger for a brother, a father, or even a son that Hector killed. Achaeans in hundreds mouthed black dust under his blows. He was no moderate man in war, your father, and that is why they mourn him through the city. Hector, you gave your parents grief and pain, but left me loneliest and heartbroken. You could not open your strong arms to me from your deathbed, or say a thoughtful word for me to cherish all my life long, as I weep for you night and day." Her voice broke, and a wail came from the women. Hecate lifted her lamenting voice among them. "Hector, dearest of sons to me, in life you had the favour of the immortal gods, and they have cared for you in death as well. Achilles captured other sons of mine in other years, and sold them overseas to Samos, Imbros, and the smoky island Lemnos. That was not his way with you. After he took your life, cutting you down with his sharp-bladed spear, he trussed and dragged you many times round the barrow of his friend Patroclus, whom you killed. Though not by this could that friend live again. But now I find you fresh as pale dew, seeming newly dead, like one to whom Apollo of the silver bow had given easy death with his mild arrows." Hecate sobbed again, and the wails redoubled. Then it was Helen's turn to make lament. "Dear Hector, dearest brother to me by far, my husband is Alexandrus, who brought me here to Troy. God that I might have died sooner. This is the 20th year since I left home and left my fatherland, but never did I have an evil word or gesture from you, no. And when some other brother-in-law or sister would revile me, or if my mother-in-law spoke to me bitterly, but Priam never did, being as mild as my own father, you would bring her round with your kind heart and gentle speech. Therefore I weep for you and for myself as well, given this fate, this grief. In all wide Troy no one is left who will befriend me, none. They all shudder at me." Helen wept, and a moan came from the people hearing her. Then Priam, the old king, commanded them, "Trojans, bring firewood to the edge of town. No need to fear an ambush of the Argives. When he dismissed me from the camp, Achilles told me clearly they will not harass us, not until dawn comes for the 12th day." Then, yoking mules and oxen to their wagons, the people thronged before the city gates. 9 days they laboured, bringing countless loads of firewood to the town. When dawn that lights the world of mortals came for the 10th day, they carried great-hearted Hector out at last, and all in tears placed his dead body high upon its pyre, then cast a torch below. When the young dawn, with fingertips of rose, made heaven bright, the Trojan people massed about Prince Hector's ritual fire. All being gathered and assembled, first they quenched the smoking pyre with tawny wine wherever flames had licked their way. Then friends and brothers picked his white bones from the char in sorrow, while the tears rolled down their cheeks. In a golden urn they put the bones, shrouding the urn with veiling of soft purple. Then in a grave dug deep they placed it and heaped it with great stones. The men were quick to raise the death mound, while in every quarter lookouts were posted to ensure against an Achaean surprise attack. When they had finished raising the barrow, they returned to Iliad, where all sat down to banquet in his honour in the hall of Priam, king. So they performed the funeral rites of Hector, tamer of horses.